Rosie, a Detroit Herstory. Written and illustrated by Bailey Sisoy Isgro. World War II. In 1939, World War II exploded across Europe when the Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler, and his Nazi Party commanded the German army to invade the nearby country of Poland. As Germany teamed up with Italy and Japan to form the Axis powers and spread their rule across the globe, 19 nations rose in opposition from North America, Europe, and Asia. These countries, led by England, the United States of America, the Soviet Union, and China, would become the Allied powers. United States President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was pressured by prominent businessmen, celebrities, and politicians to keep America out of the war. They believed that America should come first, and that the vast ocean separated the United States from a war halfway around the world. As allies like England's Prime Minister Winston Churchill pleaded for help, President Roosevelt made an impassioned argument. Suppose my neighbor's house catches fire, and I have a length of garden hose 400 or 500 feet away. If he can take my garden hose and connect it up with his hydrant, I may help him put out its fire. I don't say to him before that operation, "Neighbor, my garden hose cost me $15. You have to pay me $15 for it." I don't want $15. I want my garden hose back after the fire is over. What President Roosevelt didn't realize was how much of that help would come from two unlikely sources: the city of Detroit and a generation of tough, industrious women we call Rosies. Women at war. During World War II, women worked in every imaginable field, doing jobs that were previously the exclusive domain of men. From running family businesses to managing farms, from operating machinery to working on the assembly line, women stepped into the gaps left by men marching off to war. All across America, women produced ships, tanks, ammunition, uniforms, jeeps, and planes in spectacular quantities. No industry was more greatly affected by this change than aviation and aircraft production, particularly at facilities like Michigan's influential Willow Run plant. Over 310,000 women worked in the United States aircraft industry in 1943, making up 65% of the industry's workforce, an astonishing number compared to 1940, when women represented just 1%. Whether for reasons economic or patriotic, or to simply capitalize on newfound workplace opportunities, women entered the workforce in never-before-seen numbers during the war. Their skill, bravery, tenacity, and spirit became a rallying point of American patriotism and supplied America's allies with some much-needed manufacturing might. However, while women workers were invaluable to the war effort, their salaries, job security, personal safety, and overall treatment quite often lagged behind those of their male counterparts. Female workers rarely earned more than 50% of what men earned, were routinely laid off before men, and were often subjected to harsh treatment because of their gender. Yet for all their struggles, their successes were monumental. Today we know them as Rosies, a group of women defined not by the identity of a single riveter in a single factory, but by the collective might of hundreds of thousands of women whose labors helped save the world. To all of the Rosies, thank you for everything. A world war and a president's decree began a quest in which women were key. Heroines emerged that no one expected, young women building the unprecedented. Across America, women showed their might. Rosie the Riveter was born into this fight. And in Detroit, where battles never waged, they helped win a war and saw a nation changed. This true story starts before most women had careers, and a world war occupied nearly everyone's fears. In April 1939, the Germans crossed over Poland's territory line. The Nazis invaded, we have to help out, yelled President Roosevelt without any doubt. But as England and France both entered the fight, Americans suffered from nearness of sight. Our oceans protect us, we're so far away. Their isolationism, no one could sway. With Churchill calling so desperate for aid, Roosevelt struggled to get his war plan made. Congress simply would not get on board with the thought. He had to negotiate without being caught. In back rooms, there was born a political deal. We'll trade boats and airplanes for a real estate steal. With that clever scheme, Lend-Lease was enacted. Now U.S. war material could be crafted. Foundations for airplane factories were laid, their production increased, more and more were made. As the newspapers published frightening war scoops, Congress still refused to send American troops. Oh, the German Luftwaffe can never be caught. Building planes mean workers who will have to be taught. But Detroit answered back with a resounding cry. We'll all do our very best. We'll try and we'll try. Detroit knew how to build and how to build fast, with knowledge of machinery that was vast. To build equipment at never-before-seen speed, the auto industry needed to take the lead. Lend-Lease ensured the Allies were not overrun until a sad surprise in 1941. On December 7th, early in the morning, Pearl Harbor was ambushed without any warning. Hundreds of airplanes led the Axis attack. The United States Navy was left battered and cracked. World War II was declared and everything changed. A nationwide war draft was quickly arranged. Off to the war, the men of Detroit soon marched. At home, blue coveralls were ironed and starched. Bandanas were tied around victory curls by new factory workers, women, and girls. From family bars to the mom-and-pop shops, women took over the jobs and managed the crops. Ladies kept the lights on and the open signs hung, running businesses while the men were far flung. Bright-eyed women were plucked from local high schools and automotive secretarial pools. They were tested for aptitude, measured and weighed, sent off to training class without being delayed. Now that the fires of war and industry were lit, the women of Detroit declared, "We can do it." The women's brave reputation began to expand, so songwriters teamed up with the Kay Kaiser Band. The group wrote a hit song that coined the women's name, catapulting their war efforts to global fame. Bestowed with a nickname that's still with us today, Rosie the Riveter earned her factory pay. Top brass needed a place to oversee all. Somewhere in Detroit, something big and quite tall. The Guardian building gave rent a reduction, becoming a center of wartime production. From the Art Deco building, orders were spitting as all normal auto production was quitting. Not a single civilian car could be made until the war ended with a victor's parade. From Liberator bombers to Sherman tanks, massive battleships to machine gunner cranks, bullets by the millions and bombs by the ton, the women of Detroit helped get it all done. With a welding torch and a riveting gun, Rosie's invented new ways to get the work done. Women retrieved parts quickly on roller skates. They used pulleys and gears to stack heavy crates. The smallest would climb inside the airplane wings, attaching the rudder, steering, and flap strings. They worked all-night shifts without saying a word, even while practice air raid sirens were heard. Now off the Highland Park Ford factory floor rolled the Rolls-Royce engines that made the plane soar. Shipped to assembly at a new Ford Endeavor, Willow Run, the world's largest factory ever. A bomber an hour was Willow Run's goal. As the Rosies worked hard with heart and with soul, the Ladies' Air Corps was the best of the best, putting B-24s through every flight test. Rosie's image graced the Saturday Evening Post, painted by Norman Rockwell and seen coast to coast. Women war workers each had their own unique name, but thanks to strong Rosie, their labors found fame. Rosie's women war workers were an exciting new breed. On her, their lives depend, was Rosie's solemn creed. Her efforts kept the hopes of the Allies alive until one fateful day in 1945. May 8th brought Germany's unconditional surrender after millions of man-hours, regardless of gender. Many lives were shattered, losses deeply felt. Across the world, families grieved and they knelt. But among the great heroes who won World War II were Rosie's war workers whose legend only grew. Troops returned to Detroit through the train station. Men exited to come back to their home nation. But now the Rosies, who built all the planes and warships, were fired from factories and handed pink slips. Women found that as soon as the men had returned, their manufacturing knowledge seemed to be spurned. Some women were eager for a regular pace. Others wanted to get right back into the workplace. They'd spent 4 long years earning their own paychecks and could not accept they were now the wrong sex. Today, when you walk onto a factory floor, you will find more women than ever before, because deep in the souls and the hearts of each one rests the enduring victory all Rosies won.